Okay. Okay, welcome to Trans Global Security Broadcast. And today I've got with me Mr. Roland Stockton, all the way, from Netherlands. And we are going to be talking about the US election. As you know, it's heated up, it's going on, and we need to look at it from a neutral perspective, because we as security consultants, we only look at things from a security perspective. We're not interested in whatever other people might think in terms of, whether it's good for them, it's not good, whether this one is saying this policy or saying that policy. What we are interested in is the benefit of it to, global security. As we speak right now, America just released some messages with regard to Israel's attack on Iran, and America has said, whatever happens, if Iran should retaliate, they will, deal with Iran. So these are issues. Will Iran respond? I know there is conversation out there that the reason why Netanyahu is doing what he's doing, the prime minister, is because he knows that if he doesn't do what he wants to do now, if Kamala comes in, there's more chances that he might get restricted, because Trump is more likely to support Israel, in their current fight and, the current process, why Kamala may be a bit reluctant. So let me wait for the experts to give us their view. If you're watching us right now, I want you to like this page, I want you to share this page, and I want you to tell your friends that we're live talking about this subject matter. So let me take it to you, Mr. Rolla. What's your view on what is going on right now?
Well, hi, Temi, and thank you very much for the opportunity to join you. I do enjoy our fireside chats, as I call them. What's going on right now is what always goes on with American elections. Of course, Americans with their culture, it's very razzmatazz and Hollywood in scope, and we can see all the different shenanigans going on as one candidate dismisses the other one in personal attacks and vice versa. Of course, not all American elections have been like this, but it is very much, compared to other countries, American elections are very much more of a circus and very theatrical, which is a pity in a way, but it reflects their culture, because it takes away a lot of the things that we really should be focused on. And recently in the UK press, for example, there is major disagreement going on now between former President Trump's party, the Republican Party, and the Labour Party in the UK, the current Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, because the Labour Party have been sending people to America to assist in the Democratic campaign. And I was really surprised when I heard this, and I wasn't aware of it until 2 or 3 days ago. And in the same way, the Conservative Party sends representatives to America to help the Republican Party. That's bad enough, and I'll explain why I think so in a moment. But they also do the same when there's elections in the UK. So Republicans will come over to help Conservatives, and Democrats will come over to help the Labour Party. Now, you may recall some years ago, the Americans were criticizing foreign interference in their elections. So they're saying this on the one hand, and on the other hand, what are they doing? Well, they're allowing it to happen. Okay. And I have American friends. I've been to America. Don't get me wrong. I am not anti-American in any way, shape, or form. But you find here double standards. and this is interfering in other countries' election process. And we find this all over. Of course, the Russians interfere in election processes. In other countries, the Chinese do, and other countries do as well. And for a country that likes to call itself the epitome of democracy, and I would beg to differ there when the Americans call themselves that, for them to speak hypocritically and have double standards, I think is not good. And any country should stay out of any other country's electioneering. But this has come to light anyway. What we see happening now, everybody, is there seems to have been a move away from, well, what are you going to do if you're elected? And of course, with Kamala, however you pronounce the name, Harris, of course, it's not when she is already in power. So when she's saying, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and then the Trump campaign are saying, well, why haven't you done this, 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 and this? And her record is leaving a little bit to be desired. And I've noticed with Kamala Harris that she has recently been making a lot of attacks on former President Donald Trump, personal attacks. It is the way that politics sometimes go. It's a dirty business, I would say. But she's been making a lot of attacks on his suitability to be president and his age and so on and so forth. But she's also been playing the race card. Now, I know this is American politics. I know it's a very sensitive issue all over the world, not just in America. But she has been courting in certain, what they call them, key states, where the balance between Republican and Democratic voters is so close that they're desperate to get those people who wouldn't normally vote to go and vote. And she's been promising all sorts of assistance for the Black community, for the Latino community, and so on. And this, I think, it takes away, because people want to know about the economy, about jobs, about security, and so on and so forth. And then on the other side, we've got the former President Donald Trump, who again worries me for different reasons, because what's he doing? Well, is his normal bombastic self. He's up there strutting about and make America great again, and so on and so forth. But he's not really saying what he's going to do. And we did find this in the UK elections that were recently held. The Labour Party said a lot of things what they didn't agree with, but they didn't actually tell people what they were going to do. And now their showings in the opinion polls has hit rock bottom. People aren't happy with what they're doing. But where you've got Donald Trump on the world stage pontificating, I will end the war in a day, and I will do this, and I will do that, it's quite alarming, because he seems to be oblivious of the reality of things. And he seems to think somehow that he is somewhat unique and special. Well, in a way, of course, being what they call POTUS, President of the USA, is a unique and special position to hold. And all we've seen at the moment, it's like children in a playground. He said, she said, they said, we said. And I don't see a lot of, what are you going to do? And my personal point of view at the moment is, and I stick to this from a security point of view, that whichever one of those candidate wins, if it's Harris or if it's Trump, the rest of the world loses. I think.
Okay, you've more or less hit the nail, into the coffin, because that's exactly where I was going. Donald Trump was quoted as saying that if Kamala should win, the Russia will keep her under their armpit, more or less, like she will be bullied, by the Russian, not by the Russian, by Russian and the Chinese. And I wanted to find out from you, people have said that some of his commentary and the commentary of his vice president nominee is looking down on women. And in fact, today, as we are live doing other things, one of the known pop star global face was on the election trail with Kamala, saying that I'm here as a mother, not as a superstar, but I'm concerned about the welfare of my daughters, and more or less as if demonizing what's his name, the former president, as a woman hater, and is it this? There's that bit in terms of how both of them are using things from their past to engage. Whether you could have children, you don't have children, whether I'll deal with the North Korean, the little short man from the Korea. Look, these are very dangerous things that they're saying about other leaders around the world. And when you look at it from a global security, Trump has not been the president for more than 4 years. Things have changed. After him or when he left, Ukraine has been involved in a fight for their life with the Russians. We know what people have said about Trump and him sending secret, coronavirus jab to even Russia, and we know his position with the Chinese. We know what is happening with Taiwan as we go. So these are very, very serious issues, and I wanted you to speak to it. But before you do, I want to say, please, if you're watching us right now, I can see people are watching live on Facebook, live on LinkedIn, and live on YouTube. Please share the page. Tell your friends that we're live here. Make a comment. Send us questions so I could ask Mr. Roland your questions and let us know where you're watching from. So you could go ahead, Mr. Roland.
Yeah. So looking at the world stage, as is at the moment, the concerns, I think, for everybody, and we'll stick with the security theme, as you mentioned, Tammy, is that if you allow a bully to go unchecked, other bullies will suddenly appear. So if President Putin was allowed to go unchecked, and Trump is a friend of Putin in a way, if he brings a lot of pressure on President Zelensky of Ukraine to capitulate, which the Ukrainians don't want to do, but if he brings a lot of pressure to bear, and he says, it's going to stop now, because Trump is so you just don't know what he's going to do. He goes from, he is an unknown, he's very, very emotional. He bears a grudge, and he thinks he's something unique and special. And with that personality of his and his friendliness with Putin, he could really reshape what's happening in Europe with the Ukraine. And of course, if the Russians win in the Ukraine, well, where's next? Well, we've got Georgia, we've got Moldova, we've got the Baltic states. The problem is with the Baltic states, well, not a problem with the Baltic states. The Baltic states are part of NATO, and actually everybody knows Russia is struggling fighting against the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians are armed with Western technology, and they've been trained by Western troops. And the Russian military was found to be wanting. It was still basically World War II in philosophy, and its equipment, because of various issues, corruption and so on and so forth, it wasn't functioning as it should. Not to take away from the bravery of the Russian soldiers there, but they've been let down massively by Putin and by the military. But if he wins in the Ukraine, then there'll be Moldova and Georgia next. And Moldova and Georgia are not members of NATO. The other thing is where does he go next? And in his recent speech at the BRICS conference, he was on about Russia will never ever be looked upon as a second class power. They want to maintain this superpower status, even though economically, this war, they say, is costing them 40% of their economy is going into maintaining this war, coupled with the fact that they're losing not just hundreds, not just thousands, but tens of thousands of their young men are being killed or injured. So that is one issue where if Trump wins, it's a security problem for Europe. In addition, it's a security problem for Europe because Trump is not too pro-NATO. I can understand some of his thinkings where he says, you know, Europeans have been having their protection paid for by the Americans for way, way, way too long. American taxpayers are paying for German protection while the German taxpayer goes on holiday for 3 weeks. And they say, you know, so there's that animosity there. And in addition, of course, if it goes unchecked and he gets away with it, then President Xi in China might just say, well, you know, Taiwan's just across the straits. And what's going to happen if we invade? How far will the Americans go? So these are questions that it's difficult to answer if we allow certain things to happen. On the other side of the fence, okay, with Kamala or Camilla, however you pronounce her name, what is she saying? Well, I was just reading something yesterday, and I'll say it, but I can't authenticate it. But the guy who was mentioning this on LinkedIn or Facebook, now I'll put the caveat here. This was a guy who was obviously Republican. So, you know, take that whichever way you want. And the fact I couldn't authenticate if it's real, but he was saying that in Harris's camp, there are people with links to Hezbollah and to Hamas and to the Iranians. Now, of course, this is a different conversation, and there's lots of issues there. Of course, the very sad situation we see in the Middle East with young Israelis, young Palestinians, young Lebanese now, well, older as well, being slaughtered of the situation going there. And the Hezbollah Lebanese, the Hamas Palestinians, the Israelis, well, Hezbollah and Hamas are being used by the Iranians to act on their behalf, as are the Houthis, who were just looking to get some credibility and probably more weapons from Iran and funding. But these are proxies who are fighting like a foreign legion, Iran's war, and acting as a safeguard for Iran. It's like a firewall for Iran. We'll use these people before they could get to Iran. And in the same way, and I understand where Putin's coming from. I read a book about the mindset of the Russians. And if you look at Russian history, throughout their history, they have been attacked from which direction? Let me tell you, it's the West. The Swedes attacked them, the Finns attacked them, the Germans attacked them. Everybody's attacked them from the West. So in their mindset, you could say it's a fear, it's a paranoia that they've always been attacked from the West. And they wanted originally, and they signed an agreement, by the way. The Russians sign agreements and then break them. It's like a national tradition. But they signed an agreement that Ukraine would be a legitimate state and keep its borders and so on and so forth if it didn't have its nuclear weapons, which it got rid of. Okay. And they said, yeah, the borders of Ukraine are sacrosanct and so on and so forth. But this didn't stop Putin because he saw, and if you look at it from a Russian point of view, we're always invaded from the West. NATO's on our doorstep now. Where are they going to go next? They are paranoid. Their mindset is, because if you remember World War II, 20 million Russians were killed in World War II. Okay, 20 million. Imagine that, folks, in your own country. For some countries, I mean, there'd be none of you left. But so they have this mindset, and they wanted a buffer zone between Soviet Union or the Russian Federation and the West, with Ukraine, Belarus, though Belarus effectively is part of Russia. They would argue differently, but we know he's just a puppet, and he's crazy. Their leader is absolutely off his head. And you may remember that he lost the election in Belarus, and a Russian army went in to make sure that he was the one in charge. So Belarus is basically it's a colony of Russia. But you've then got Poland, which borders it, and Putin wanted this neutral buffer zone between Russian Federation and the West. He didn't get it. So looking at it from a security point of view, we have all these contentious issues going on. But now let's look at it a little bit from an African perspective. Okay, security in Africa. We know that there's the issues in the Sahel for different reasons. We know that there are issues in North Africa with Islamic Brotherhood and so on and so forth. We know that's bubbling under. And in sub-Saharan Africa, we know that there's Nigeria, for example, Boko Haram and others. There is lots of issues there. But the Russians are meddling in African affairs. And if Trump gets in, I think they would be emboldened. The Chinese are meddling in African affairs. Europeans, again, meddling in African affairs. Why? It's because they want the natural resources that Africa has to offer. Okay. We're not necessarily making sure that the African people who live in those countries benefit from those natural resources. So if Trump gets into power, Trump being Republican, I always say Americans only do things. I'm saying this acknowledging the great sacrifices by American soldiers, World War II, Korean War, for example, and other wars on everybody's behalf. But we're looking now at the capitalist system in America, as opposed to really a capitalist system in China by another name, and in Russia by another name, exploitation. But they only do things that serve their global purpose. And I've been reading a number of reports recently where it said America is losing Africa. Okay, and China and Russia are making inroads, and Europeans are, again, I just read in the last couple of days that Keir Starmer has said that, the UK let its influence in Africa decline, but it's now seeing a need to improve things. So there's all these issues going on, and from a security point of view, for the respective countries, be they sub-Saharan African or part of North Africa, I would be thinking, well, if we are going to be the battleground between the superpowers, how is this battle going to be fought? And will there be more military coups? Will there be more corrupt politicians? And the corrupt politicians, everybody, I'm not saying only in Africa. Corruption is a global thing. But from a security perspective, I would be rather alarmed by Trump getting in power for these reasons. But for Kamala Harris, it is a difficult one because she's an unknown. And people are saying she doesn't really have a great grasp on geopolitics and so on. I always say that if there's an area where you're not very clever, then hire people who are experts in that area. So I'm hoping that if she gets into power, it does worry me, Trump worries me as well, that she listens and acts upon the advice from people who know. So I do have, serious concerns about what is going to happen in Europe, because I live in Europe, what is going to happen in Africa, what is going to happen in other parts of the world where we don't know, with these two diametrically opposed, very volatile, emotional people. I often wonder, just going slightly away from this, America, is this the best you can do for presidential candidates, Trump and Harris? Your population, and you come up with these two, and the rest of the world should be holding its breath, probably is, and thinking, let's hope that cool heads prevail. And whichever one of these people gets into power, they listen very, very careful to what their security people are telling them.
Thank you so much. We've never had it this bad in American politics. We have the far extreme left and the far extreme right. And for sensible, matured conversation, you need to be in the center of politics, where things are done. There are people that, of course, are happy that Kamala as a woman is coming up. Not that we're taking it away from her, but they're not too happy with our extreme left-wing philosophy. While there are people that are happy with the bullish approach that Donald Trump has, because they believe that might be what you need in the world to be able to put some people to check, but unhappy with the right-wing extreme. If I get to power, I will get rid of everybody from the country. America is a country of migrants, and it's funny that even the president went to the Red Indians, as they call them, to actually go and ask for forgiveness for what the Americans have done. We've got 2 minutes to go before we close up. What would be your message to our viewers in terms of what they should be looking for and what they should be hoping their leaders do as whichever party comes to power in America?
It would be nice to see the African Union going center stage and saying this is the voice of the African Union, and approaching whoever in America is the president. This is what we expect. This is what we want. As a collective, because together you are much stronger than you are separate. So I would like to see the African Union becoming more vocal in its approach and more thinking about the well-being of all the Africans and not just a small elite. And then in the same way, I would like to see the Europeans, those members of NATO and those people who piggyback on the backs of NATO without paying anything, the so-called neutral countries, okay? I would like to see them stand up to whoever is in power and also say, no, we're equal in NATO. And yes, we agree that we have to do more individually to make the collective NATO much stronger. And worldwide, of course, it's difficult because there's so many unknown variables. We just don't know in the Pacific which way the Americans are going to go, how they're going to be with Australia, New Zealand, with Canada, all these issues. African point of view, African Union, now's the time to stand on your own 2 feet and be vocal.
Thank you so much and we'll leave it at that point. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or on YouTube. We're back again, 3 p.m. next week with quite an exciting conversation, and our posters will be out for us to, and if you have questions, just send your questions, to us. We'll be more than happy, to deal with it. You will see our email address coming up underneath, info at trans-security- That's Intelligence, I mean, that's security.com. If you want to be part of this program, send us an email and we'll look into it. Until we hear from you next week, is bye from me and bye from Mr. Roland. God bless you all.
Everybody, take care, stay safe, and keep